Alright guys, in this video we're going over chapter 5, which is language. So we're going to focus specifically a lot on like symbols and language and syntax and that kind of stuff. We'll talk about the nature of language, appreciating the power of words, the use and abuse of language, and how you can improve the ways in which you use your language. So first off, the nature of language. Language is symbolic. All right. So what we mean by that is we create symbols that represent things in our language. So to give an example of this, this is the word barn in 5 different languages and what the symbol actually looks like. So for barn for us, this is the symbol. The actual word barn is the symbol. In Dutch it's sure, Portuguese it's celeiro, and from there on you can go ahead and try to guess how to read those things. But basically what it's getting at is all 5 of these things mean the same thing, but there's 5 different symbols. So the word, if you actually look at the word itself, that is the symbol. Language is symbolic because it might look different. All 5 of these languages have a different symbol for barn. However, all 5 of these things still mean barn. It's just that the symbols are associated with these different languages. It's arbitrary, meaning that most words have only an arbitrary connection to their meanings. There's not an actual clear-cut reason why we choose the words that we do to represent the things that we do. If you think of the word chair, why does chair actually represent a chair? They don't look alike, they don't sound alike, they don't actually connect at all. That's just something we've agreed upon. Elephant, wall, anything you can actually, any word you can think of, it's not like it has a direct relationship. It's not like it's the same thing. It's not like they look alike, smell alike, taste alike, feel alike. It's just that we've created the meaning behind it, but it is arbitrary. Words literally mean whatever we, the users of the language, choose for them to mean. We pick words, we agree that they should mean something, and then boom, they become the symbols that represent all of the things that create the world in which we live in. They create our social understanding of the world because we have all these meanings attached to these symbols, and we can use these symbols to basically play ball in the social world in which we live in. But then there's this thing called onomatopoeia, and this is a word formed by imitating the sound associated with its meaning. So this is if we do something like psh or bang, or bang's the only one I can think of. But if you say the word bang, that actually makes the sound bang. So it's actually, that's onomatopoeia. That's a word that imitates the sound associated with its meaning. So there are cases where the symbol itself actually has a lot related to it. The word bang sounds a lot and looks a lot like an actual bang that might come when something falls or when a gun is shot or something like that. But that's not as often as the arbitrary meaning associated with the words we make. It's governed by rules. We have phonological rules. There's rules about how we are supposed to pronounce things. There's syntax rules, meaning there are rules about how we order words into a phrase. Like, hey, how you doing? Not how you doing, are you? Hey, there are syntactic rules. There are rules about how we are supposed to put words into order to create phrases that mean things. There's semantic rules. We have agreed upon meaning amongst words. There's pragmatic rules and rules about how one should interpret, not just rules about how we're supposed to say things and intend for them to sound, but rules about how we are supposed to interpret things when other people are talking to us. Language has layers of meaning, and we can break it down into 2 main layers. There's denotative and connotative. Denotative is the literal dictionary definition. If you go and look up the word fox, all right, or if you call somebody a fox, say, "Oh man, you're a fox," or "Oh girl, you're a fox." Whatever it is you're saying, whoever you're talking to, the denotative meaning is like you literally calling them the animal a fox. You are calling them a fluffy orange and white cute little animal that burrows into holes and catches field mice or whatever fox do. It's like you'd literally be calling them that animal, the literal dictionary definition. But we all know when you're calling somebody a fox, that's not what you mean. You're trying to say they're attractive or they're fine or you're into them or whatever. That's the connotative meaning, a secondary or implied meaning. So if you're calling somebody a fox, or you're saying whatever. I hope y'all aren't going around calling each other foxes, but I mean, we hear the phrase like a silver fox, right? I mean, that doesn't literally mean you're calling somebody a fox that's painted silver. That's typically assessed with an older gentleman that's got gray hair that's attractive. All right, so there's denotative meaning to words and there's connotative meaning to words. So again, think of these things like go hard, you're a chicken, what a babe, you're a pig. Like, you're not literally calling somebody a chicken when you're calling them a chicken. You're not saying you're a bird, you're poultry, you're saying you're a sissy. So all these different phrases, all these different words, we do this all the time. But there are layers of meaning, denotative and connotative. We can think about the semantic triangle. All right, and this refers to how the referent relates to the referred and relates to the reference, or how the referent relates to the symbol and the reference. Referent, reference, symbol. All right, so basically, so the symbol is the word home in the bottom left, right? So this is the symbol, this is the word that we're communicating, right? Now, home in itself doesn't mean anything. However, there's a referent. We've created a denotative meaning to it. We've created a dictionary definition of what home is. And that's what we picture at the top of the pyramid, right? We picture a home. We picture a house. This is where people live. It's a building that's constructed in which people live. However, the connotative meaning, it's the reference. It's what we think of. It's what we see. It's what we envision. It's our feelings associated with that. And the feelings that typically derive from home are an image of family, an image of belonging, a sense of kind of family community. So be familiar with the semantic triangle and how language is constructed and how the symbol relates to the referent and how that leads to the reference. Language has layers of meaning, yet again. There's loaded language that comprises words with strongly positive or negative connotative meanings. So again, if we think of some of these words like cancer, thug, hillbilly, family, determination, bailout, ashamed, freedom. These are strong words that have a lot of connotation with them, right? I mean, if we think of things like cancer and thug, that doesn't really have a positive. You don't think of cancer and you're like, oh, joy, right? Or you don't think of thug and you're like, oh, cool, somebody I want to go hang out with, right? They've got negative connotations to them, and they're strong negative connotations. Whereas things like family and freedom, we think of those and they have a much stronger, more positive connotative meaning. So these are loaded languages. Words have strong positive or negative connotative meanings. The denotative meanings of loaded language may be emotionally neutral. Right? I mean, if we really think about it, the word family doesn't really have a strong denotative meaning to it. It's the emotions and the connotations that come with the word family that make it such a strong word often. Language varies in its clarity. Language is bound by context and culture. So words mean different things dependent upon context and dependent upon culture. And the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis kind of gets at this. It basically states that language shapes our reality, and I've kind of talked about this multiple times, but it's basically the syntax, the code, the language that we've created, the language that we've grown up in, the language in which we are most familiar with shapes the world in which we live in. It gives us the tools, it gives us the symbols to create and understand the references that we're making and to understand the meaning behind those symbols. Language shapes our reality. Linguistic determinism talks about we need the vocab to understand it. That's supposed to say the. We need to have the vocabulary to understand things. If we don't have the words, if we don't have the way to describe it, if we don't have a way to say, oh, that's what this is, then we don't truly have the ability to understand what it is. We must have words, we must have language to understand anything. Linguistic relativity gets at the idea that different languages really do live in different realities. I mean, if you think about the ways that we greet each other amongst different cultures and different languages, there's a different reality surrounding that. Some people kiss on the cheek, some people bow, some people shake hands, some people hug. It's all culturally bound, and it's because there's different languages, there's different ways of communicating those things. And just so you know, this hypothesis has been widely questioned by researchers, but a lot of what it says about how language shapes our reality and we need to understand it, and there's different languages that create different realities, a lot of this stuff holds true still today. Now let's talk a little bit about the power of words. We use words to name and that defines us. We use words to name things, and it defines who we are, and it defines how we see the world. We use words to persuade. If we think about Aristotle and the Sophists, well, there's ethos, pathos, and logos. All right, so ethos refers to how credible the speaker is, how trustworthy the speaker is, how moral the character of the speaker is. So we consider these things. Pathos, it really gets at how much passion or how much emotion is being expressed. How much passion and emotion are we paying attention to when people speak? And logos relies on the ability to present logic or have reason to which or have a strong reason behind what it is you're saying. So whenever you're talking, whenever you're interacting with people, try to incorporate these three things into your communication, but also be looking for these three things. How credible is the speaker? How much do they know about this topic? How familiar are they with this topic? What do they actually know in the first place to make them credible to be talking about it? How passionate are they? What are the emotions that they're conveying? Are they being sarcastic? Are they being humorous? Are they being dramatic? What is it? What are the emotions that are at play here? And then logos. How logical is this? How much does this actually make sense in the first place? Credibility empowers us. Credibility is the extent to which others perceive us to be competent and trustworthy. If we are seen as competent and trustworthy, people buy into us. People drink the Kool-Aid. That's why the big, powerful leaders at organizations like Google and YouTube and, Sony, whatever big organizations you can think of, they have leaders that are seen as credible, and people buy into those people. They buy into their visions and the ideas and the ways that they express them. There's several forms of language that can enhance or diminish our credibility too. So keep in mind that the way we use language and the ways that we talk either make us seem more credible or make us seem less credible. So we need to be very picky with how we talk. Language expresses affection and intimately. We can use language and the symbols associated to have affectionate conversations. It's how we can maintain and establish our close relationships through that affectionate communication and language. And giving and receiving affection are good for our health. So it's important that we understand that we can express affection and intimacy. We need language in order to express affection and intimacy, and ultimately having the ability to express affection and intimacy is good for our overall health. Words provide comfort and healing. When we are in tough times, when we lose a loved one, when we're going through hardships, we use language to comfort those in needs and our relational others, and we also use language to comfort ourselves. We often talk to ourselves about topics. We think about things. We analyze things. We say things. Often you just want to vent and you just want to talk with somebody. All right. Sometimes we're in the position where we need to offer others social support and we need to use our language to comfort them and say the things they need to hear. But also at times we just need to vent. We just need to get things out. And we have to have the correct language in order to accomplish both of these things. So the use and abuse of language. So humor oftentimes can be seen as kind of not really an abuse, but it's just something we don't expect. Humor violates our expectations, and that's what makes it funny. It can enhance communication. It can help put others at ease. It can diffuse stressing and reinforcing intimacy. Right? It can really it's comic relief. It can calm things down. But humor can also be harmful. It can be demeaning to social or cultural groups. This is where people use racist jokes, sexist jokes, jokes about people with disabilities, so on and so forth. And again, it could be offending or harassing to others. So humor is one of these things where it's great. It can really be enhanceful to communication. It can really be great in your interpersonal relationships. You can use it to really connect with people in a lot of ways, but it can also be damaging if you're not careful. So again, you got to be aware of the language you use, the context you're in, and the way that you're speaking when it comes to humor. Euphemisms, these are vague, mild expressions symbolizing something more harsh or blunt. It can provide a way to talk about sensitive topics. It can also desensitize people to important issues. So if you think about things like you weren't accepted versus your dumbass got rejected, that's a different type of euphemism. This is a different way of explaining you didn't get into a college or you didn't get into a specific program or something. But we need to be careful with the euphemisms we use. Slang. This comprises informal words often understood only by others in a particular group. So slang, again, this is group. We've talked a little bit about culture and cold culture. Slang is used within culture and cold cultures. All right, like I don't even know what like lit, like it's lit, or like YOLO used to be a thing. YOLO's not really a thing anymore, right? These are all slang terms that are culturally situated within different groups. And we can use these to differentiate between the in group and the out group. If people don't know what these slang terms mean, you know they don't belong to the group. You know that they're not one of quote unquote you if they aren't familiar with the slang that you're using, or the terminology in which is being used, or if you're in a situation where there's a lot of slang and a lot of terminology being used that you don't understand, you're probably not a part of that in group. It can alienate outsiders, so it can kind of be good in terms of helping us understand. Okay, I'm in a different group now. I need to be aware that language is being used differently than what I'm used to. That's a good thing, and that helps us. But it can also alienate outsiders. It can put up kind of these walls and not allow people that are different to kind of be a part of the group and understand and try to learn from one another. So it can help us. It can help us differentiate and navigate things, but it can also alienate us. So, for example, go tell a grandparent to turn up and tell me how that goes. See if they understand what the hell you mean when you say that. In group versus out group. Libel and slander, these are defamatory statements made about others. So I'm just going to go through this real quick. You can read it. Libel is a defamatory statement made in print or some other fixed medium. It's something that can't be erased or taken away. And slander is a statement made aloud within earshot of others. So slander is when you're saying something loud enough for other people to actually hear it with their ears. Libel is when you actually put it in print or in some kind of medium that can't really just be cleaned up. So how to improve your language use. Consider the effect you wish to create by avoiding shared knowledge errors. This is when you think other listeners have knowledge they don't have. Don't just assume that everybody knows everything about the World of Warcraft if you're talking about World of Warcraft. Or don't just assume everybody knows as much about working on cars as you. Don't assume everybody knows as much as they do about football as you. Do not just assume people have the knowledge that you think they might have. Make sure that people are aware and you're providing the right kind of knowledge and information so people can basically keep up with you in the conversation. Shared opinion errors. Don't just assume listeners share your opinions. I use a personal example. I'm about 6'7". I work out. I'm kind of I'm kind of built. I'm really big. I got a beard. I kind of have this stereotypical people look at me and they assume like NFL football player, or they assume that I'm associated with some kind of political party, or they just assume I have these beliefs or opinions or views based on like my physical stature, and it happens all the time. And it's like, nope, I don't agree with you when I get in these conversations with people. I'm sure this happens to you all the time, whether you're out at the bar or with your friends or at the movie or wherever it might be, where you're talking with strangers, and they just kind of assume for whatever situation that they're going to agree with you or you're going to agree with them on their political views or religious views or sports views or whatever. Don't do that. Don't just assume people share your opinions. It's a great way to make an ass out of yourself and irritate people. So always try to, question and dialogue and get to know people and what they really and how they really view things before you just start assuming they share the same view as you and that everybody agrees with how you see the world. And then there's monopolization errors. This is when one speaker dominates the conversation. So again, don't be in those social situations where you're the only one talking because everybody else is going to be wishing you would shut up for a little bit. Separate opinions from factual claims. Factual claims can be verified with evidence and shown to be true or false. All right, when people are talking to you, make sure you're separating. Okay, this is their personal opinion versus, okay, this is a fact. This is something that can be measured. This is something I can go look up. This is something I can go prove. It's objectively true or false. I played college basketball for 2 years. Actually, this was yeah. So, sorry, this was an example I've used in previous classes, but what I'm saying here is I played basketball for 2 years. This is something that's true. I played college basketball for 2 years. You can go look it up. You can go find that information. I played college basketball for 2 years. That's legit. Now, if I go and say something like, I can ball as good as LeBron James, that's my opinion. I might believe that, but that can't really be factually proven. I mean, you can compare statistics, you can compare career, that kind of stuff, but until I'm playing ball one-on-one with LeBron, there's really no way to prove that to be true or false, which, by the way, is completely false. LeBron would completely destroy me. Opinions express personal judgments that we can agree or disagree with, but are not true or false in an absolute sense. So they can't necessarily be completely true. They can't be completely false. Again, opinions are much more about just personal judgments. So again, there's the second part of my example. I mean, yeah, I'm as good as LeBron, which is just a complete lie. How do we improve? Speak at an appropriate level. Avoid talking over people's heads and avoid talking down to people. Don't you got to gauge this. You're going to be in situations where sometimes you're the expert on a conversation. Don't talk over people's heads. Don't talk in a way or share information in a way that nobody's going to understand, and don't talk down to people either, like, "Oh, well, I'm the expert. I'm better at this. I know this better than you." So avoid these things. Don't be like a Judge Judy. She's the master of this. She's always talking down to people. And then own your thoughts and feelings. All right? So understand the difference between I language and you statements. All right? If you are feeling some way, so for this example right here, an I statement, so say you're pissed off at somebody, you're mad at somebody. An I statement would say, I'm mad right now. A you statement is, you're making me mad. So when you're in a situation where you're upset or you're in a confrontational context, just be aware, own your feelings. Own your thoughts. Take ownership of what you're thinking and feeling. This is what a competent communicator does. Instead of saying, you're pissing me off, I'm mad, you're making me mad, I'm mad at you right now, it's your fault that I'm mad, what you're going to say instead is, I'm mad right now. Personally, I'm feeling upset in this situation. Whereas somebody that's not as competent of a communicator is going to say, you're making me mad right now, I'm blaming this all on you. That's a you statement. All right. So just make sure you are taking responsibility for your thoughts and feelings whenever you're in those types of situations.